Hello. Hello and welcome to Phil Talking D20. So today's episode is a good one. And the reason I say that is because it's backstory and background related. And that is something that's really, really important when you're trying to ground a character in a game, especially in your own mind. Because if you're not sure what you're playing and why you're playing it, it's going to be hard to kind of get into the swing of things when it comes to that moment where you're in the pub, because there's always a tavern scene, there's always an inn scene, and quite often there's that moment where you have to meet other members of the party and try and kind of start that bonding process of establishing why your characters and their characters are kind of getting together and going into the adventure that they're going into. There are obviously a myriad ways you can do that, which I'll do in a separate video. But for the purposes of this video, it's more about establishing yourself as a character and why you kind of are that character and why you've chosen it. Now, a lot of people get kind of bogged down in backgrounds and backstories. And there are some people that don't do it at all, and they kind of fudge it out as they kind of go, and they just go, I just want to play that because. And there are other people that really get stuck into it and kind of come up with these big epic sagas of like all the myriad things their characters have done. And if you're level 1, those don't make any sense. But if you're not level 1, they do. So again, we'll side table that kind of as a notion, and focus on level 1 characters, and why you want a solid but simple, interesting but short and punchy backstory. Now, how on earth do you do that, I hear you cry? It's actually very simple. Is it? Yeah, believe it or not, because the mechanics are right here in front of us when we're creating our characters. The mechanics in the system for obviously 5th edition and for 2E and a lot of other systems that have pre-baked in abilities for classes, but also background kind of systems, enable us to actually, once we think about the individual elements, enable us to create a quite solid, simple and perfectly adequate backstory. So in the previous video, we were talking about a double-R druid knight, and we were talking about a kind of woodsman fighter. But one of the kind of offhand comments I made about the fighter when we were flicking through the ancestry feats was, adapted cantrip. We can pick cantrip and suddenly be a fighter that's got a cantrip. And I said, what about the light spell? That would be cool. Now, we're going to kind of focus in on that. And we're going to come up with this backstory based on a very simple premise. And we're using the mechanics to do it. So, fighter, human, adapted cantrip, the light cantrip. The background guard, which gives us intimidate, legal law skills, and the quick coercion skill feat, that already adds that bolt-in flavour of being a guard. Now, the night watchman. It's a dark and stormy night as the caravan travels precariously down this rickety kind of mud and stone road, desperate for signs that they're near the settlement of Iron Wall, their hoped resting place for the night and their safety until sunrise. And the storm and the rain kind of, break the sky around them, and the rain batters on the canvas roofs of the wagons as everyone sits kind of hunkered down, hoping for signs of salvation and civilization. And then, as they crest the rise, they see the little beacon of glimmering light in the shape of a shield, and stood atop the battlements is our watchman, ever vigilant against the darkness, his shield illuminating the battlements as he kind of keeps kind of vigil over the gatehouse. And he kind of peers around, and they can see his light, and they know that safety is at hand, and they travel on knowing that any minute now he's going to see them and let them into the city and safety. So he's not just some night watchman, he's a local figure of legend. He's a hero in waiting because he can cast the light into the darkness and be that little beacon of hope for weary and fearful travellers playing their kind of wares down the kind of the dangerous roads of nighttime Mathilion or whatever fantasy region you're gaming in. You're not just Joe Public anymore. You're a combatant who stands for something and has this kind of meaning and resonance within his local community. As he kind of marches down the kind of the dark alleys, he illuminates them as he's going. And so, people feel a bit safer knowing that it's harder for brigands and bandits to lurk in shadows and jump out and stick them with a knife, because he's there shining his light into those kind of hidey holes and dark alleyways and making sure there's no one down there and keeping an eye on the town while they sleep. Boom, the night watchman. That's right, he's not just a guard. He's Steve, the guard. All right, my name's Steve. I've got a light spell on my shield. But you've actually, in a way, you've almost created this kind of custom magical item. That people, the actual residents of the town, would perhaps even believe that he had a magical shield. They're not going to ask too many questions. He's got magic. He's clearly someone that's potent, powerful, mysterious. That's right, Steve, the mysterious night watchman. Ooh. So, you've already got something that's quite cool there, and it's not taken us a great deal of effort to look at a background, look at an ancestry feat in a class, and combine them into something that's a bit special. So, why is he adventuring? Well, he comes from a long family line of night watchmen. They've always had the light cantrip, going as far back as many, many, many generations into the time of great darkness, where their light spell helped them and their people survive some great tumultuous trouble in the history of the world. And their lights were the kind of the beacon that kind of let people know they were going to be safe and make it through the night and not be preyed upon by the monsters that dwelleth in the dark places. Instantly, you've got some kind of family legacy that you can build into that, because you don't just wake up and go, oh, turns out I've got some magic. Well, who knew? And move on. You've got to kind of put some mythos. You've got to put some drama into it, because if you don't, no one else will. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? You've got to decide why your character is cool, because that's not anyone else's job. It's yours. And this is how we can do it. So it's not taken us a great amount of effort to suddenly kind of go from having what could just be yet another generic human fighter. And that is one of those classic entry classes. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's a great combination. It's a great class. Fighter has always been a fun and exciting class. But now we're putting this new angle on it, and we're going, well, actually, he's a little bit of magic. There's a little bit of mysterious going on there. And Bob's your uncle. Backstory. Why is he adventuring now? So the family have been in this city of Iron Wall for generations, standing guard in the darkness with their light shields, kind of protecting the populace. But it's a very safe place. They do a good job. It's hard to be a crook in a city where maybe many, many, many members of the Night Watch have this innate magical ability to put, a light spell on a sword or a shield or on a helmet, so they can have a flashy one. Blue flashing helmet, running on the streets, chasing you in the dead of night. Terrifying. Maybe one of them's a bard and actually plays like a as he's running. Who knows? But that's by the by. We've kind of established that this town, this city, this place that your character comes from is famous for its kind of capable and very, dynamic, kind of magically kind of fueled, well-trained, professional, blue flashy light spell wielding, band of warrior night watchmen. So there isn't a lot of adventure. But your character's, young. He's kind of gone, well, it's great that I've got these powers and maybe I'll come back here someday, but I want to be a real adventurer. And that's why I'm traveling out into the world to see real places and go dungeon delving and have actual kind of, party player kind of adventure style arcs. But I've kept my background, my legacy of this past that's part of my family tradition alive and well, and someday I'll go back there and take up my position on the walls as a watchman against the night and fighting crooks with my blue flashy helmet. So Bob's your uncle, backstory. And we just use some very simple mechanics and we create something that's quite cool and quite unique. Now that's Pathfinder 2e, and we can do it just as easily in 5th edition. Exhibit A, very scruffy 5th edition character sheet. It's always good to have a scruffy character sheet, I find. Thorgrim Ironaxe. This is one of my characters from 5th edition. He is a dwarven fighter, background acolyte. Again, I used mechanics in the game to build a backstory, and I read through all my options and I picked the ones that stuck out to me and engaged with my kind of excitement and what I thought was cool, and I built a backstory. Very simple. Dwarf fighter, acolyte background, religion. So he comes from a religious background. His personality traits, I see omens. His ideals, tradition. His bonds, I owe my life to the church. And then flaws, easily trust members of my faith. So how did that create a backstory? Very simple. In the past, his family were travelling to Waterdeep as merchants, and they were ambushed by brigands and killed. But he survived and was rescued by a warrior of the Church of Clangeddin Silverbeard, the dwarven war god in the 5e pantheon. So, I owe my life to the church. That's why I was rescued as a baby, or as an infant, or as a 7-year-old, or whatever kind of age bracket you want. It doesn't have to be specific, but as a youngling, he was rescued and raised by the church. Ideals, tradition, I see omens. So I survived for a reason and was brought to the church for a reason, and that's why I'm now a fighter and an acolyte. So I have my religion knowledge, I have my religion skill, so I can apply my knowledge of my faith, and I can carry out the ideals of my faith, because Clangeddin Silverbeard is a god of war, and I'm a fighter. So what do? Once I finished my training in the arts of combat, that obviously I would have been taught, bearing in mind I was raised by a church of a war god, and I travel from my nearby hold to the city of Waterdeep that my parents were so keen to reach, so that I can make sure that no one suffers the same fate as my parents, and that traders and travellers can be safe upon the roads, because a dwarven fighter of Clangeddin Silverbeard travels those lands looking for adventure and generally doing good and helping out. I have a reason to be adventuring, and I have a background based on the rules and mechanics presented to me in the game. It's that simple. All you need to do is read through the options from the classes and the backgrounds and piece together things that stand out, and then use those as kind of the foundations to build a backstory. It doesn't need to be complicated. I've just done 2 very quick, very simple, but meaty enough to survive a conversation in a pub or a fireside chat in a caravan campsite. And once I've kind of got those points across to the party at various different nattering points and chatting points, I can grow on it if I need to. I probably won't need to, because most of the time you don't spend hours talking about your past as players. You're moving on and you're having new adventures, and that's the kind of the talking points, and the things that you're doing going forward are the things that you're concentrating on. But having just enough to make your character feel like they've got a place that's solidified in the world is important. And I hope you can see that, and I hope you can understand how I've been able to use simple game mechanics that are presented to me on each of these pages to build something that's got some flavour and some dynamism, but isn't going to bog down in a 20-minute monologue that no one else wants to hear. Make sense? Awesome. Hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully you'll be able to come up with some cool backstories by flicking through and having a look at some kind of options in backgrounds and in classes, and kind of simply ask yourself, why has my character got these abilities? Where have they come from? And what could that mean for a backstory? And then, string some connecting dots together backstory. Bob's your uncle. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Drop it a like, give me a sub. If you obviously want to post any comments about kind of backstories that you can create in a similar kind of, using this system, or if you've got your own cast iron, solid gold, foolproof system for creating cool, simple, engaging backstories without huge amounts of panic and struggle and effort and strife. Because again, like I said, this isn't a topic that a lot of people kind of delve into and think, oh, it's easy. A lot of people kind of wonder how much should they have, how little should they have. Some people just don't do it at all, but you should, because like I said, it enriches your play experience. Once you've got these things that you can connect yourself into the world with, it makes it easier for you as a player to make decisions and reactions for your character when impasses and situations arise in the gaming world and present themselves to you as the player and your character in the world. So it is important, you should do it. And like I said, 5-10 minutes, look at what you've been given and what you've chosen and ask yourself why, and then backstory. Almost writes itself, doesn't it? So give it a go. Let me know if you like it. Let me know if you come up with some cool ones. Post them in the comments. And next video, I'm going to look at how you can introduce your character, because this is another kind of classic. Every first session, there is that moment where you have to introduce yourself. All the streams you watch on Twitch and what have you, there's always that really funny, slightly clunky, awkward moment where the DM says to someone, introduce your character or describe your character. And they always bog down, they always stick, and they start saying things like, oh, they're about 6 foot tall, or oh, they're wearing this type of armor. And they fall into this very kind of linear kind of structured description, and we all do it. I've done it multiple times. It's very easy to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another video that's going to be kind of this kind of length, where I'm going to show you how you can take that kind of backstory, background kind of class skill ability orientated view on generating some fluff, and then turn that into a couple of sentences of narrative that will make your character have that more engaging and exciting feel. But again, importantly, not waste 20 minutes of monologue about why your character is so bloody brilliant and everyone should bloody love them. So drop me a like, drop me a sub, leave me some comments about your backgrounds, give me some awesome kind of quick fire backstories for characters that you've created. You don't even have to be playing the character, just literally pick up the book. Do some page flicking and go, that, this, that, boom, why, this, because of that. That means I've got a backstory. And I'll see you on the next video. Take care. Peace.